Okay, everyone, this is a video on the rhetoric of videography. Thanks for watching. It's going to be quite a bit shorter than the one on photography because a lot of the features that apply to the rhetoric of photography also apply to the rhetoric of videography. So I'm really only going to make two broad points about the rhetoric of videography, uh, and that's all we're going to do. I'll show you some examples related to the rhetoric of videography, and then yeah, that's about it. So let's start with the first thing, right? And the first point I want to make is that all the rhetorical features that pertain to photography also apply to videography. So we mentioned composition, viewpoint, lighting, color, and shot type in the lecture on the rhetoric of photography up here, right? And all those same things apply to videography. So when you watch a movie or you see a video of some sort, they all apply and think about those rhetorical features when they're constructing those videos as well, right? They think about the composition, they think about the viewpoint and the lighting and the color and all the shot types, right? So when you're thinking about the rhetoric of those things, you can also think about the rhetoric as it pertains to the things we talked about during that lecture on photography, right? In fact, a lot of the language of photography is very similar to the language of videography. When they do make a movie, they talk about starting principal photography and things like that. So a lot of the same type of language and same principles apply, right? The only added elements of videography that I want you to focus on, and these are sort of broad, are motion, duration, and shot sequence. So these are the only things that video really adds to what we're doing, and they're really important. They add a lot, but we can think of them as sort of the three basic things that video adds as a medium. They add the element of motion, the element of duration, and the element of shot sequence. Okay? So we'll start with motion. Motion is just, it applies to the fact that in video, the subject of what you're looking at can move in the frame, in and out of the frame if they want, right? And the camera itself can move and often does, right? So you take a photo with a still camera, the person in it will not be moving. You, the photographer, in essence, will not be moving either. Your camera just stays right wherever you shot it, right? Whereas a video camera, you can get closer to the subject, you can get further away, you can move left and right. The person who is in the shot can move as much as they want to as well, right? And so that motion ends up playing a large part in how the audience experiences the video. And I'll show you some examples of that here in a second. But here are a few different types of motion that occur in videos. The first and most prominent is called panning. A panning is when you move the camera left or right in a shot. So here's an example of a panning shot from YouTube. It's very simple. See, it just moves. Sometimes panning shots are done to bring people into frame. Sometimes they're done like this, where a person comes in and then leaves the frame. But oftentimes, but it's always moving the camera left to right. We call that panning. Okay. Zooming in and out, you're probably familiar with because you can do it on camera too, like on a still camera as well. It's just when you get tighter or wider on a subject using the zoom feature of a camera. Okay, so yeah, that's basically all that is. You probably know what that is. I can show you an example of that here, and we'll look at this multiple times. But if you see this, and this is probably actually not using the zoom feature. This is probably a camera on a track getting closer, but it has the same effect. We see a certain amount of information in a wider shot. This is like a medium shot right here. And then you see them get a little close up on the mask right here. See how they're getting closer and closer to that mask? They're probably not zooming, or maybe they're zooming and getting closer, like a tracking shot, which we'll talk about here in a second. But the whole purpose of doing something like zooming in is to draw the audience's attention to one particular feature of a broader thing. Okay? And zooming out does the exact opposite. So let's say I want to focus on that mask, and then I widened it out to see that he's standing on a city street and all these sorts of things. I could do that, right? So zooming is a feature that allows you to add and subtract information, or add information, or provide a narrower focus for your audience. Tracking is when the camera follows the subject backward or forward. And so this is actually probably an example of a tracking shot where they had a track laid up behind him. the camera actually got closer to the subject as they were doing this. Now, usually when tracking shots are done, they're done with someone else who's in motion. So someone's walking towards you and the camera is coming back, and so it looks like they're not getting any closer. That's a tracking shot, right? But in terms of camera motion, it's the same thing. It's moving back or forward with the camera, okay? So that's motion, or how it takes place often. Now, some of the elements of photography apply in motion too. You'll remember in our composition discussion, we talked about what's called leading space, or the rule of space, right here, rule of space, where you want action, wherever direction the action is going in a photo, there to be space out in front of it. The same is often true with videography as well, right? We want there to be some room in front of wherever the action is going, okay? And I'll show you some examples of that here in a second when we look at these full clips. So you'll see that here in a second. But let's move on to duration, because this is another element that often happens in the video editing process that changes photography into videography. A photo is still, it doesn't change. You usually don't get, there is no sequence for how long it will last. You can look at a photo as long as you want. But in a video, you only get shots for a certain period of time, okay? So a shot may last 1 second. It may last 4 seconds. It may last 5, 10, 15. Some shots in some movies last for minutes, or even like a half an hour at a time, right? Typically, shots in videos are much shorter than you might imagine, between like 2 and 5 seconds long, right? Short shots provide a sense of like frantic action, that things are moving quickly, right? Longer shots provide a sense of like continuity and significance to something. If you stay focused on one thing for a long period of time, people tend to think that thing is important. But I'll show you an example of what short shots can do to a sequence right here, okay? So this is a fight scene from the Jason Bourne movie called The Bourne Identity. And these movies got relatively famous in the cinematography world because they revolutionized fight scenes to make their fight scenes really frantic, feel really frantic, because the shots are very quick. Some of these shots aren't even a second long. So you'll see as I play this how quickly the camera moves from shot to shot, okay? Boom, change, 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 change. Do you see all these different shots? These are all different cuts to different shots. Let me slow it down a little bit and maybe you'll see it even more. Played at half speed. Move, that was a change. 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 You see how even at half speed, some of these aren't even lasting a second or two long, right? So this is a fight sequence made up of thousands, probably, of shots, okay? But if you watch it in real time, it feels very frantic, like a fight probably would, because of all these very quick shots. The audience can feel almost disoriented as a result of all these different shots from the camera. Now, the director is really smart in that he mixes in a couple of shots that are a little bit longer, right, so your audience has a chance to breathe a little bit, right? But he also amps it back up again with these quick shots, right? Trying to show the pacing of a fight in that, using different shot types in the duration, okay? Does that make sense? You can also see in this the way he mixes up shot types. There are close-ups and medium shots happening in here. There are even some extreme close-ups, right? Like that. That's a medium shot, right? That's a medium shot right there. But then you'll see that's an extreme close-up, right? So the director here is mixing up different shots so that you can see them and giving different durations, but sticking to pretty much really short shots so that we can get a sense of franticness from this, right? Does that make sense? Okay. I don't have an example for long shots, but you can guess they're just longer in time, right? I do want to talk a little bit about shot sequence too, because it's really important to videography. It typically editors will choose whatever shots fit the story they're trying to tell. And the best way to show you this is to show you one that does it masterfully, right? So we're going to watch this sequence. This is the opening to The Dark Knight. It's the bank robbery scene where the Joker robs the bank, right? But you'll see here a mixture of different types of shots and different motions that tell a story so well, okay? So here we start with a medium shot that moves into a close-up on this mask, right? And then you see him get in this truck. Medium shot, close-up, and then here's an amazing shot that's a medium that moves into this wide shot right here. These wide shots give us a greater context of what's taking place, right? Very daring. Medium shots in the car here. You'll see the leading space out here where they're talking and the car is moving.
I know why they call him the Joker. So why do they call him the Joker? I heard he wears makeup. Makeup? Yeah, to scare people. You know, war paint.
You'll see a lot of medium shots in this scene because there are a lot of different people interacting with each other. Okay? So that's what most of it is. So he mixes in wide shots very well, like this right here, this whole bank right here. Right? A lot of symmetry happening, a lot of balance. Foregrounding, backgrounding right there.
It's funny, a guy like a 911 was trying to reach a private number. Is it a problem? No, I'm done.
So yeah, this is a great example of somebody mixing different types of shots to tell a story in this moment, right? We only looked at a minute and a half of video, but we already see a lot of these different elements happening, okay? So that's what I wanted to tell you about videography. It's very similar to photography, so think about them in similar ways. But if you have any questions or anything, please let me know. You have an activity due for Thursday on videography where let's go to your syllabus here, ask you to discuss how the visual rhetorical features of 5-star and how NFL rules changes made NFL linemen gigantic differ from each other. So these are two videos that are posted in the under your readings, right? And then I want you to post to the discussion thread video breakdown, okay? So please do that by Thursday night, and we'll have our conferences on Thursday and Friday as usual, okay? And be thinking about what you want to do for your visual rhetorical analysis, all right? Thanks, everybody.